Hey friends, welcome to the channel. I'm Tirso and I'm a creative director based in New York City. We're going to keep this video nice and simple. For anyone looking to design books for learning, here is a roundup of my recommendations. I will link everything in the description below. When it comes to typography, Elements of a Typographic Style by Robert Bringhurst should essentially be your Bible. This book has been around since like the late 1900s. To this day, every strong graphic design program uses this book. I say it all the time that typography is what separates the strong designers from the mediocre ones. I can always tell when someone has taken the time to understand typography versus those that rely on copying trends. The book explains philosophy behind typography, whether you're a complete type nerd or you just want a basic yet strong foundation for type, this is the book to reference. Full transparency that this is a very heavy read. You're probably not going to finish it in one sitting, but read sections or parts of it, implement what you've learned into your projects, and just learn the concepts over time. If you're looking for a more fun and casual approach to typography, Thinking with Type by Ellen Lupton is absolutely wonderful. I met her at a lecture when I was in college, and she is definitely a character, but in the best possible way. This book goes over the basics and some advanced type rules. The exercises are also helpful for putting things into context. The NYCTA Graphic Standards Manual is probably the most popular, but I really love the EPA Standards Manual. It's not really a book that you would sit down and read, but instead analyze design and understand how well the system works. The design of this is like liquid gold for me. Can we start off by looking at the ghost emboss on the cover, and then there are these beautiful gatefolds throughout. I'm sure not everyone cares about this, but I am such a sucker for high impact printing. Printing like this is really hard to come by nowadays because everything is so digital focused. I do think the book is a great example of how a grid system can be implemented. Speaking of grids, Grid Systems is a book on, well, grids. If I had $1 for every time I caught a designer not using a grid, I could probably pay my yearly rent. Let's look at a couple things on how grids affect your designs. The width of your columns affect the line length of your type. If the line length is too long, it will also impact the legibility. Margins have purpose in how large they are in proportion to the rest of your grid. Does your grid need to look like this? Or can it look like this? Or this? Exposure in design is important, and this book explores a breadth of examples on how grids work. Now, I don't think you need to complicate your grids, but if you're looking for a deeper understanding, this is the book to buy. So we have a book for type and grids. Now we need a book for color, and that book should be The Interaction of Color by Joseph Albers. This book can help you control color and also create your own palettes. I love parallels in the creative field, and there's a section in the book that explains approaching color as you would cooking. I love to cook, so this was a perfect example for me. When you taste your cooking, you have to adjust it accordingly. If it needs more seasoning, then you add more seasoning. If it's too salty, then you need an acid to balance it out. This is the same for color. If you need more saturation, add more saturation. If it feels too warm, then balance it out with cooler tones. If you looked up information design or visual literacy, it should just be a photo of Edward Tufte. He is the professor emeritus at Yale. His books are comprehensive yet robust. If data is your thing, buy any and all of his books. He has 8 listed here. I have 4 of his books. I bought these at a workshop I took with him years ago, and they are actually signed. Benefits of doing things IRL versus URL. If any of you are interested in his workshop, it is now offered online, which is great because it's accessible to more people. I will drop a link in the description below. Not all design books are meant to be read. You want to expose yourself to as much design as possible, and a great way to do that is by purchasing design annuals. SPD is the Society for Publication Designers. They round out the best in editorial design year over year. I also have here SPD Gold, which I love because it was designed by legendary Carla Frank, and I am a huge fan of hers. When it comes to editorial design, there isn't really a client except for internal stakeholders. This allows editorial art directors and creative directors to have pie-in-the-sky ideas. There's a significant amount of typography and photography for you to find concepts for your projects. The idea isn't to copy. Most of the time, you're gonna have to adjust anyway. Here's a cover of Tennis Magazine where they're using a duotone effect. Maybe this inspires you to do a cyan and red duotone, and if you wear the 3D glasses, it would give it some dimension. You can also keep your images simple and apply that effect to your type. Here's a cover of Brad Pitt. It has a blurred vignette around his face. Maybe this inspires the idea of using perspective because that's how we see with peripheral vision in a digital capacity. Maybe your animations open and close just like our eyes do. I'm making this up, but the idea is to make things your own. This is How To by Michael Beirut. Clearly the color on mine is faded, it sits on my coffee table, and I get a lot of sun in my apartment. What is there to say about Michael Beirut other than the fact that he is a legend in the industry? He's a partner at Pentagram. He previously worked at Vignelli & Associates, who designed the branding for the New York City subway system. He has achieved more than most. Another legend in the industry is Ruba Abunimah. She is the executive creative director at Tiffany's. I went to her book signing the other month. Her book is simply photograph pairings that relate to each other. Things like this can spark a lot of ideas for you by seeing how other designers see the world differently. Photography is a huge part of design, and it can definitely influence more ideas for you to explore. Speaking of photography, look into books from photographers. I have this book from Irving Penn. If you don't know who Irving Penn is, he is famous for his fashion photos, still lives, and portraits. If you're needing other photographers to look into, you can also try Peter Lindbergh, Annie Leibovitz, or Helmut Newton. Go back because the older the better. That is my roundup of books. What design books are you currently reading? Do you have any of the ones that I mentioned, and what are your thoughts on them? Leave me a comment below. If you would be so kind, please subscribe to the channel. I am always so appreciative. I will see you next time.